The boy sat slumped against the barn wall, knees drawn to his chest, boots still laced tight even as his eyelids drooped with exhaustion. Dust clung to his torn shirt. Blood had dried along his knuckles. His wrists bore rope burns, raw and weeping, the kind that came from being dragged behind something fast. He couldn't have been more than 16. Wade Hollister stood in the doorway of his own barn, lantern raised, staring at the kid like he'd just found a ghost. The boy's head snapped up at the light, eyes wide and animal wild, and he scrambled backward into the hay bales, boots scraping wood. "Don't," the boy rasped, "don't." Wade didn't move, just held the lantern steady, letting the glow settle between them like a truce. "Easy," Wade said quietly. "You're on my land. Nobody's coming through that door but me." The boy's breathing came fast and shallow. His gaze darted to the barn entrance, then back to Wade, calculating distance, weighing chances. He looked like he'd been running for days. Wade set the lantern on a post and crouched low, hands visible, palms open. "You hurt." The boy didn't answer. His jaw worked like he wanted to speak, but couldn't trust the words. Wade's eyes tracked over him, rope burns, bruises darkening along his collarbone, a split lip that hadn't stopped bleeding. The boy's shirt hung open at the collar, torn clean down the side. And there, just above his heart, a brand mark, fresh, still blistered. Wade's stomach turned. "Who did that to you?" The boy flinched. His hand went to his chest, covering the mark like he could hide it. "I can sleep in my boots," he muttered, voice cracking. "I don't need nothing. I'll be gone by morning." Wade stayed crouched. "That's not what I asked." The boy's face twisted, shame and fury tangled together. "Doesn't matter. They paid for me fair. I ran. That makes me the thief." Wade's jaw tightened. He'd heard that logic before, heard it used to justify all kinds of cruelty. The war had been over for 6 years, but men still found ways to trade in human misery, still found legal words to wrap around chains. "You got a name." The boy hesitated, then barely audible, "Ethan." "Ethan what?" "Just Ethan." Wade nodded slowly. He rose to his feet, moving carefully, and walked to the workbench. He pulled a tin cup from the shelf, filled it from the water barrel, and set it on the ground halfway between them. "Drink that, then we'll talk." Ethan stared at the cup like it might be poisoned, but thirst won. He crawled forward, snatched it, and drank in gulping, desperate swallows. Water spilled down his chin. Wade waited. He leaned against the post, arms crossed, watching the kid's hands shake as he drained the cup. When Ethan finally lowered it, Wade spoke again. "How long you been running?" "3 days." "From where?" Ethan's eyes flicked up. "You ask a lot of questions for a man who don't want trouble." "I didn't say I don't want trouble. I said you're safe in this barn. Those are different things." Ethan set the cup down, his fingers curled into fists. "There was an auction outside Covenant Ridge. They sell labor contracts. Legal, they call it. You sign your name, you work 5 years, they feed you and house you, except I didn't sign nothing. My pa did, before he died. And the man who bought the paper says I owe the debt." Wade's expression didn't change, but something cold settled behind his ribs. "Who bought it?" Ethan's voice dropped. "Carson Lyle." Wade went still. The name hung in the barn like smoke. Carson Lyle, land baron, cattle king, a man who'd carved an empire out of the post-war chaos by buying up contracts, foreclosures, and debts. A man who employed more guns than ranch hands. And a man Wade had once called a friend. Ethan was watching him now, sharp-eyed despite the exhaustion. "You know him." Wade didn't deny it. "I know him." "Then you know what he does." "I know what he's capable of." Ethan laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "He branded me like livestock, said I needed to learn my place, said if I ran again, he'd hang me for theft of property, his property." Wade's hands tightened into fists at his sides. He looked at the boy, really looked, and for the first time, something in Ethan's face snagged in his memory. The shape of his eyes, the line of his jaw. "What was your pa's name?" Ethan frowned. "Why?" Just tell me. Samuel Dorsey. The air went out of Wade's lungs. He turned away, gripping the edge of the workbench, staring at nothing. Samuel Dorsey. He hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in 8 years, hadn't let himself think it. You knew him, Ethan said behind him. It wasn't a question. Wade nodded slowly. I knew him. How? Wade closed his eyes. We served together during the war. Ethan stood, boots scuffing the floor. Then you know he was a good man. Wade's throat tightened. I know he saved my life twice. Silence filled the barn. Outside, a horse nickered softly. The wind picked up, rattling the loose boards. Ethan's voice came quieter now. He talked about you after the war, said you were the only officer who gave a damn about the men under you, said you pulled him out of a burning supply wagon when everyone else ran. Wade turned. He tell you anything else? Ethan shook his head. He didn't talk much about the war, just said he owed you, and that if I ever got in trouble, I should find a man named Wade Hollister. He paused. Guess that's you. Wade stared at the boy, Samuel's boy, standing in his barn, beaten and branded, hunted like an animal. And Wade had done nothing. He'd heard the rumors about Carson Lyle's labor contracts, heard the stories about boys disappearing into his ranches, working until they dropped. He told himself it wasn't his business, told himself the war was over and he'd earned the right to peace. But Samuel Dorsey had saved his life, and Wade had let his son become property. You can't stay here, Wade said finally. Ethan's face went hard. I know, I'll be gone before sunrise. That's not what I meant, Wade stepped forward. You stay here, Carson will come looking, and when he does, there'll be blood. I won't have that on my land. Then what? We're going to end this, Wade said, all of it. Ethan stared at him. You can't fight Carson Lyle. He owns half the county, the sheriff, the judge, he'll kill you. Wade picked up the lantern. Maybe, but your pa saved my life twice. I figure I owe him at least one try. He walked toward the barn door, then stopped and looked back. Pull those boots off, Ethan. Rest easy tonight, son. Tomorrow we ride. Morning came cold and gray. Wade stood at the stove, frying eggs and salt pork, while Ethan slept on a bedroll in the corner. The boy had finally pulled his boots off around midnight, and now he lay curled on his side, one hand still tucked against his chest, where the brand mark throbbed. Wade didn't wake him, not yet. He poured coffee, black and bitter, and carried it to the porch. The land stretched out before him, rolling hills, dry grass, a few head of cattle grazing near the creek. It wasn't much, but it was his, bought with war pay and sweat and silence. He'd come here to forget. But the past had a way of finding you anyway. The door creaked behind him. Ethan stood in the doorway, barefoot, shirt still torn. He looked younger in the morning light, more fragile. Smells good, Ethan said quietly. Wade nodded toward the table. Eat, then we talk. They sat across from each other, the kind of silence that happens between men who don't yet trust but don't have a choice. Ethan ate like he hadn't seen food in days because he probably hadn't. Wade watched him, seeing Samuel in every movement, the way he held his fork, the way his eyes checked the door every few seconds. Your pa ever tell you about Shiloh? Wade asked. Ethan looked up. The battle. Yeah. Not much, just that it was bad. Wade nodded. It was. We lost half our company in the first hour. I took shrapnel in the leg, couldn't walk. Your pa dragged me 2 miles through enemy lines, carried me on his back, never complained once. Ethan set his fork down. He never told me that. He wouldn't. Samuel didn't talk about what he did, just did it. Ethan's jaw worked. After the war, he tried to start a farm, but the land was bad, crops failed. He borrowed money from a man in town. When he couldn't pay it back, the man sold the debt. His voice cracked. Pa died 6 months later, fever, and Carson Lyle showed up at the funeral with the contract, said I owed 5 years' labor or he'd take me to court. Wade's hands tightened around his cup. And you went. Didn't have a choice, Judge said the debt was legal. Pa's signature was on the paper. But yours wasn't. Didn't matter. Judge said a son inherits his father's debts. Ethan looked down at his hands. First week, I tried to leave. Carson's men caught me, tied me to a post. That's when he touched his chest, said I needed to remember who I belonged to. Wade felt something dark and cold settle in his gut. How many others? At Carson's ranch, maybe 20, all boys, all with contracts their pa signed. Ethan's voice turned bitter. Legal slavery, that's what it is, and nobody does a damn thing because Carson owns the law. Wade stood and walked to the window. Outside, dust rose on the horizon, riders, still distant, but coming closer. They're looking for you, Wade said. Ethan was on his feet instantly. I'll run, I won't bring them here. Sit down. Bud. Sit down. Ethan sank back into the chair, fists clenched. Wade turned to face him. I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. Ethan waited, jaw tight. Wade took a breath. 8 years ago, after the war, I came back here and tried to forget. I heard things, rumors, about men buying up contracts, working boys half to death. I heard Carson Lyle's name more than once. He paused, and I didn't do a damn thing. Ethan's face went pale. You knee. W. I knew enough. I told myself it wasn't my fight, that I'd done my part, that I'd earned peace. You let it happen. Yeah, Wade's voice was steady, but his hands shook. I let it happen, and 6 months ago I was in town, saw a group of boys being loaded into a wagon, chains on their wrists. I asked who they were. Someone said they were Carson's new crew, contract labor. He met Ethan's eyes. One of them looked at me, scared, begging without words, and I walked away. Ethan stood slowly, face twisted with fury. You saw him, you saw what they were doing, and you did nothing. I did nothing. My pa saved your life, twice, and you. I know, Wade's voice cracked. I know what I owe him, and I know I can never pay it back, but I can start now, with you. Ethan's breath came hard and fast. His fists trembled at his sides. You think that makes it right? You think one good deed erases all that silence? No, Wade said quietly. I don't, but it's all I've got. The riders were closer now. Wade could hear the hoofbeats, low and steady. Ethan turned toward the door. I'm leaving. You leave now, they'll hunt you down. You know that. Then what? Ethan spun back, eyes wet. What do you want me to do? Forgive you? Thank you. My pa's dead because men like you looked the other way. Wade didn't flinch. You're right, and I'll carry that until I'm in the ground. But right now, those men are coming here, and you've got two choices, run and die alone, or stay and fight. Ethan stared at him, chest heaving. Your pa believed in something, Wade said. He believed in standing when everyone else ran. He believed in pulling men out of the fire even when it cost him. You're his son. What do you believe in? The hoofbeats grew louder. Ethan closed his eyes. When he opened them, something had shifted. The fear was still there, but so was something else. Resolve. I believe, Ethan said slowly, that some debts can't be paid with money or words. He looked at Wade. Only blood. Wade nodded. Then we're agreed. He walked to the corner of the room and pulled back a canvas tarp. Beneath it, a rifle, a shotgun, a revolver. He checked the loads, then handed the revolver to Ethan. You know how to use this. Ethan took it, grip steady. Pa taught me. Good, Wade loaded the rifle, because Carson's men don't take prisoners. They stood side by side, watching through the window as the riders crested the hill. 5 of them, armed, moving slow and deliberate. At the front, a man in a black duster, tall, lean, a silver star pinned to his chest. Carson Lyle's pet sheriff. Wade checked the rifle one more time. No matter what happens, he said, you stay behind me, understand? Ethan nodded. The riders stopped 30 yards from the house. The sheriff dismounted, hand resting on his holster. Wade Hollister, he called. We're here for the boy, send him out and there won't be trouble. Wade stepped onto the porch, rifle lowered but ready. Boys under my protection now, Dalton. You want him, you'll have to go through me. Sheriff Dalton grinned. That can be arranged. The wind picked up, kicking dust across the yard. It swirled between the riders and the porch, blurring the lines, making the air taste like metal. Sheriff Dalton stood with his thumbs hooked in his belt, that grin still stretched across his face. Behind him, the four men sat their horses, hands near their guns, eyes flat and patient. "You're making a mistake, Wade," Dalton called. "That boy's got a legal contract. He's Carson Lyle's property until his debt's paid." Wade kept the rifle low. Funny how that contract got signed by a dead man. His father's debt, legal inheritance, judge signed off on it. "Your judge, Carson's judge." Dalton's grin widened. "Law's the law, Wade. You of all people should respect that." Inside the house, Wade could feel Ethan behind him, tense as a drawn bow. The boy's breathing was quick and shallow, the kind of fear that came from knowing what these men were capable of. Wade had seen it before, during the war, in the faces of men who knew the next bullet had their name on it. "Here's what's going to happen," Dalton continued, taking a step forward. "You're going to send that boy out. We're going to take him back to Carson's ranch where he belongs. And you're going to go back to your cattle and your quiet little life." Everybody walks away. "And if I don't?" Dalton's hand drifted toward his holster. "Then we stop asking nice." One of the riders spat tobacco juice into the dirt. Another adjusted his hat, eyes never leaving Wade's face. They were professionals, men who'd done this before. Wade recognized the type. He'd served beside them during the war. Good soldiers, bad men. "Carson send you?" Wade asked. "Carson don't need to send me," Dalton said. "This is my county. I enforce the law." "Since when?" Dalton's jaw tightened. "Careful, Wade. I remember when you wore a different uniform, Dalton, when you followed different orders." "RS," Wade's voice dropped. "I remember Chattanooga." The grin slipped from Dalton's face. Behind him, one of the riders shifted in his saddle. The air changed, tension coiling tighter. "That was war," Dalton said quietly. "This is now. You burned farmhouses then too, called it strategy, called it orders." Wade took a step forward. "What do you call it now?" Dalton's hand moved to his gun. "I call it enforcing a legal contract." "You ever meet Samuel Dorsey?" Wade asked suddenly. Dalton frowned. "Who?" "The boy's father, good man, fought at Shiloh, saved my life, came home, tried to start over, and got crushed by men like you and Carson, men who saw the war as an opportunity." "This ain't about the war." "Everything's about the war," Wade's voice cracked like a whip. "You think it ended just because we stopped shooting? It's still going, still grinding men down, still finding new ways to chain people." Dalton drew his gun, fast, clean, the barrel leveled at Wade's chest. "Last chance, Wade, send him out." Behind Wade, Ethan whispered, "I'll go, I won't let you die for me." "Stay," Wade said without looking back. His eyes stayed locked on Dalton. "Your pa didn't run, neither will you." Dalton thumbed back the hammer. "You really want to die for some kid you don't even know?" "I know him," Wade said quietly. "I know his father saved me twice, and I know I've been a coward for 8 years. That stops today." The riders behind Dalton spread out, flanking positions. Hands moved to weapons. The wind died, leaving everything still and silent. Then, from the road behind the riders, a voice called out. "Well now, this looks interesting." Everyone turned. 3 men on horseback sat at the top of the rise, not gunmen, ranch hands, older, weathered, men who'd worked the land longer than most of the riders had been alive. The one in front, gray-bearded, missing 2 fingers on his left hand, urged his horse forward. "Morning, Wade," the old man said. Wade felt something loosen in his chest. "Morning, Cass." Cass looked at Dalton, then at the riders, then back at Wade. "You got trouble?" "Seems that way." "Need help?" "Wouldn't refuse it." Cass nodded. He looked at the men beside him. You boys feel like sitting this one out. The two men shook their heads. Cass turned back to Dalton. Well, Sheriff, looks like the odds just changed. Dalton's face went red. This is official business. This is you trying to drag a boy back to Carson Lyle's hellhole ranch, Cass said flatly. We all know what goes on there. We've all heard the stories, and we're all damn tired of pretending we don't. One of the riders shifted. You really want to die for this, old man? Cass smiled, slow and dangerous. Son, I'm 72 years old. I've buried 3 wives, 2 sons, and more friends than I can count. Dying don't scare me near as much as living like a coward. Behind the riders, more figures appeared on the road. Not gunmen, not hired muscle, just people, townspeople, ranch hands, a blacksmith, a shopkeeper, men and women who'd watched in silence for too long. Dalton looked around, his confidence cracking. You're all making a mistake. No, a woman's voice said. She stepped forward, gray hair pulled back, flour still dusting her apron. The mistake was letting men like Carson Lyle run this county without pushback. The mistake was letting boys disappear into his ranch and pretending we didn't notice. Another man spoke up. My nephew worked one of those contracts, died 6 months in. Lyle said it was an accident. We all knew better. Dalton's gun wavered. He looked at his men. They looked back, uncertain now. You can't stop the law, Dalton started. We're not stopping the law, Cass said. We're stopping you. The crowd pressed closer, not threatening, just present witnesses. Dalton lowered his gun slowly. His face twisted with rage, but he knew when he was beaten. This isn't over, he said to Wade. Yeah, Wade said quietly, it is. Dalton holstered his weapon and swung back into the saddle. He looked at his men, jerked his head, and they turned their horses. As they rode away, the crowd watched in silence. When the dust finally settled, Cass dismounted and walked up to the porch. He looked at Wade, then at Ethan standing in the doorway. That's Samuel Dorsey's boy. Wade nodded. Cass studied Ethan for a long moment, then he smiled. You look like your pa, he was a good man. Ethan's voice came rough. You knew him. Knew of him, heard he saved Wade's life. Twice. Cass looked at Wade. Guess you figured it was time to return the favor. Wade didn't answer. He just stood there, rifle still in his hand, watching the horizon where Dalton and his men had disappeared. The woman in the flour-dusted apron stepped forward. What happens now? Wade looked at her, then at the crowd, then at Ethan. Now, he said slowly, we finish it. That night, Wade and Ethan sat on the porch while the last light bled from the sky. The crowd had dispersed. Said hours ago, but their presence still lingered, proof that silence could be broken, that people could choose to stand. Ethan hadn't said much since Dalton left. He sat with his arms wrapped around his knees, staring at nothing. Wade poured coffee from the pot on the stove and handed a cup to the boy. Drink, it'll help. Ethan took it but didn't drink. Why'd they come, those people? They don't know me. No, Wade said, but they knew what was right. That's not enough. People know lots of things are wrong, doesn't mean they do anything about it. Wade sat down beside him. You're not wrong. Most of the time people look away. It's easier, safer. He paused. But sometimes all it takes is one person to stand, and then another, and another. You stood, Ethan said quietly. Took me long enough. Ethan finally drank, wincing at the bitterness. You think Dalton's done? No, he'll go back to Carson, and Carson will come himself. Then what was the point? We just delayed it. Wade looked at him. The point is you're not alone anymore, and neither am I. Ethan set the cup down. His hand went to his chest, fingers tracing the edges of the brand through his shirt. Does it still hurt? Wade asked. Yeah. Let me see it. Ethan hesitated, then pulled his shirt open. The brand was angry and red, the skin blistered and weeping. Wade could make out the shape, Carson's cattle brand, pressed into human flesh. Wade's jaw tightened. He stood and went inside, returning with a tin of salve and clean bandages. "This'll help with the pain, won't make it heal faster, but it'll keep it from getting infected." He knelt and began applying the salve, careful and gentle. Ethan hissed through his teeth but didn't pull away. "Your pa ever tell you about the time we got caught in a barn fire?" Wade asked, trying to distract him. "No." "Supply depot went up during a raid. We were trapped inside, smoke so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. I panicked, started running the wrong direction." Wade smoothed the bandage over the brand. "Your pa grabbed me, knocked me down, dragged me out the back. I fought him the whole way, thought he was trying to kill me. Turns out he was saving my life." Ethan watched him work. "What's your point?" "Sometimes you can't see the way out. Sometimes you need someone to drag you through the smoke." "You think you're dragging me out?" "I think we're dragging each other." Wade finished the bandage and sat back. Ethan pulled his shirt closed, fingers lingering on the fabric. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Ethan said quietly, "for not helping sooner." "I'm not asking you to." "Then what do you want?" Wade looked out at the darkening land. "I want to make sure no other boy ends up like you. I want to make sure your pa's death meant something, and I want to stop being the man who looks away." Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then, "Pa used to say that guilt's a heavy load, but carrying it's better than forgetting why you picked it up in the first place." Wade's throat tightened. He was right. They sat in silence as the stars came out. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The wind rustled through the dry grass. "I'm scared," Ethan admitted suddenly, "of what's coming, of Carson." "Good, fear keeps you sharp." "You scared?" Wade nodded, terrified. "But you're doing it anyway." "Yeah." Ethan looked at him. "Why?" Wade thought about it, about Samuel dragging him through smoke, about the boys in chains, about 8 years of silence. "Because I'm tired," he said finally, "tired of being afraid, tired of pretending I don't see what's right in front of me, and because your pa deserved better, you deserve better." Ethan's eyes shone in the starlight. "You really think we can stop him, Carson?" "I think we can try, and I think that's enough." They finished their coffee as the night deepened. Inside, Wade unrolled an extra bedroll and set it near the stove. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow's going to be hard." Ethan lay down, but he didn't close his eyes. "Wade." "Yes." "Thank you for standing." Wade looked at him, this boy who'd been beaten and branded and hunted, who still had the strength to say thank you. "Rest easy tonight, son," Wade said quietly. "You're safe here." And for the first time since he'd stumbled into that barn, Ethan believed it. Carson Lyle arrived 3 days later. He didn't come with guns blazing or threats shouted from horseback. He came alone, riding a black gelding, dressed in a tailored suit like he was heading to church. Wade watched from the porch as Carson dismounted and tied his horse to the rail. "Wade," Carson said pleasantly, "it's been a while." "Not long enough." Carson smiled. He looked older than Wade remembered, lines around his eyes, gray creeping into his temples, but his eyes were the same, cold, calculating. "I hear you've been harboring my property." "I've been protecting a boy." "Same thing, legally speaking." Wade stepped down from tea. He porch, rifle in hand. "I don't care about your legalities, Carson. That boy's not going back." Carson sighed like Wade was being unreasonable. "You know I can't let this slide. If one boy runs and gets away with it, they'll all run. Bad for business." "Then maybe you're in the wrong business." Carson's smile faded. "You don't understand how the world works anymore, Wade. The war changed things. There's opportunity now for men with vision." "Vision," Wade repeated. "That what you call branding children?" "I call it teaching respect, teaching value." Carson took a step closer. "That boy's father owed me money. The debt's legal. The contract's legal. The judge." "Your judge?" "Signed off on it. This is how the world works now. Then the world's broken. Carson studied him. You've changed. You used to understand pragmatism. During the war, you made hard choices, sacrificed men to win battles. What's different now? Wade met his eyes. I'm tired of sacrificing people for other men's ambitions. Behind Wade, the door opened. Ethan stepped out, no longer hiding. Carson's gaze shifted to him. There you are, caused me quite a bit of trouble, boy. Ethan didn't respond. He stood beside Wade, shoulders back, chin up. Carson shook his head. You know, I'll just take you to court. The law's on my side, you'll lose. Maybe, Wade said, but we'll make a lot of noise losing, and people are watching now. As if summoned, figures appeared on the road. Cass, the woman with the flour-dusted apron, the blacksmith, others, not a mob, just witnesses, people who'd decided silence was no longer acceptable. Carson looked at them, then back at Wade. You really think a handful of townspeople can stop me? I think they already have. Carson's jaw tightened. I own this county, Wade, the sheriff, the judge, the land. You can't fight that. Watch me. For a long moment, Carson just stood there. Then he laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You know what your problem is, Wade? You still think the war was about something noble, about right and wrong. It wasn't. It was about power, and power's what I have now. Power you got by grinding down men like Samuel Dorsey. Carson's expression shifted. Samuel Dorsey, that boy's father. He looked at Ethan. Your pa was a fool, borrowed money he couldn't pay back, died broke and useless, left you nothing but debt. Ethan took a step forward, fists clenched. Wade put a hand on his shoulder. Easy. Carson smiled. Truth hurts, doesn't it, boy? Your pa was weak, that's why he's dead. My pa, Ethan said, voice shaking, saved Wade's life. Twice. He pulled men out of fires. He stood when others ran. You call that weak? I call it wasted effort. Those men are dead anyway. Wade's grip on his rifle tightened. Get off my land, Carson. Or what? You'll shoot me in front of all these witnesses. Carson gestured to the crowd. You're not a killer, Wade, not anymore. You're right, Wade said quietly. I'm not, but I'm done letting men like you win. He raised his voice, addressing the crowd. Carson Lyle claims he owns a legal contract, but that contract was signed under duress. The boy's father was desperate, dying. Carson knew it and exploited it. That's not law, that's theft. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. And it's not just Ethan, Wade continued. There are 20 boys at Carson's ranch right now, all with contracts their fathers signed, all trapped, all branded like cattle. He looked at Carson. How many of them have died, Carson? How many accidents? Carson's face went red. You have no proof. I have witnesses, Wade said. Men who have worked your ranch, men who have seen what you do, and they're ready to talk. From the crowd, a man stepped forward. Young, scarred, missing part of his left ear. I worked Carson's ranch for 3 years, the man said. Saw 2 boys die, one from exhaustion, one from infection after he was whipped. Carson called them accidents. They weren't. Another man spoke. My cousin died there too, 16 years old. Carson's confidence cracked. You can't prove anything. We can try, Cass said. And even if we lose in your court, we'll make sure everyone knows what you are. Carson looked around, at the crowd, at Wade, at Ethan. His empire, built on silence and fear, was crumbling. This isn't over, he said finally. Yeah, Wade said, it is. Carson mounted his horse and rode away, back straight, but his power diminished. The crowd stayed for a while, talking quietly, planning. Cass approached Wade. You know he'll fight this. I know. Could get ugly. Probably will. Cass nodded. We'll be ready. Over the next weeks, the county changed. Slowly, painfully, but it changed. A new judge was appointed, one who didn't owe Carson Lyle. Sheriff Dalton was removed. Investigations began into Carson's contracts. Not all the boys were freed immediately. The law moved slowly, but cracks appeared in the system, and light began to seep through. Ethan stayed with Wah. He worked the ranch, mended fences, learned to trust again. The brand on his chest healed into a scar, a reminder, but not a chain. One evening, months later, they stood at the fence line, watching the sunset. "You ever think about your pa?" Wade asked. "Every day." "What do you think he'd say about all this?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, "I think he'd say you finally paid your debt." Wade shook his head. "I'll never pay it, not fully, but I can live with that now." "Why?" "Because I'm not running anymore, I'm not looking away, and that's a start." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, it is." They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. The land stretched out before them, hard and unforgiving, but theirs. And for the first time in years, Wade Hollister felt like he could finally rest. Not because the fight was over, but because he'd finally chosen to stand. Two figures silhouetted against the dying light, a man and a boy, standing side by side at a fence line, boots planted in the dust, watching the horizon where shadows give way to stars. The wind picks up. Somewhere, a gate swings on old hinges. And in the distance, where the land meets the sky, the world holds its breath, waiting to see what tomorrow brings.